I propose that we go to the third presentation, and then please note down your question on paper, on Google Doc, in your head, what you want. And Kerstin, the floor is yours. You should be sharing on Zoom so we can see it.
Yes, thank you. Let me share just a second. So hopefully you should see my screen now.
Yeah, we see the Essay Navigator. Thank you.
Great. First of all, I want to say one thing. I'm just the co-author of the Essay Navigator. Kamal was the initial author, but he couldn't make it today. That's why I'm presenting this. So that's not all my work. It was a lot of his work too. But I know it very well. So let me tell you what I'm going to tell you today. First of all, I want to give you some background information, how we started with the Essay Navigator, but not really with the Essay Navigator. First, we did a little experiment, how students could write essays with ChatGPT. And out of this experiment, the Essay Navigator was created. I want to give you a short overview what's in the Essay Navigator and give you a few examples of the prompting strategies we put in this document. So what was our experiment with the essay writing? We tried to simulate different student types. So what would happen if a student just copy pastes his assignment into ChatGPT or any other generative AI and want to see what's going to happen, what grade they would get, and how they would how it would be if you just copy paste it. The second student type or simulation was, what if students put a little effort in it, not just copy paste it, have a little own thoughts, give some feedback to the generative AI, and find out what would be the grades if you just do it with little effort. And the third part was, what grades would we get if we really work with ChatGPT? In this case, it was ChatGPT. If we really would work with the system and try to really learn something and get good grades out of it. The project was started because everyone was last year, everyone was really scared of, oh my God, is the time for written essays over? Is ChatGPT taking over all of it? And we wanted to find out how it's really looking at our at the IU, and how helpful are these tools, and how good students could use it, and if written exams are still valid for students. So let's have a look at the copy-paste student. The question was, what happens if students just simply copy-paste the task they get? We found out that it's not working all the time. So there are some kind of essays or written exams that could not just simply be copy paste. For example, we had a project portfolio and we couldn't just copy paste it, so that wouldn't work anyway. And of all the 10 essays we created aliases so that no one of the teachers would recognize that we are IU staff and not normal students. They failed. 60% of the essays failed, and the best grade we got was 3.7. So not a really good student, but still 40% with just copy pasting the assignment task would pass in this test. So then we tried the little effort. So we read what ChatGPT created.
Yes, can I interrupt?
Yeah. Yes.
So did you use the normal correction pipeline system of the IU, which means that the people didn't even know that they were fake students? Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I may have been the guinea pig so as well.
I'm not sure if you.
No, I
if
don't think so,
you
but that's fine.
yeah, but we really wanted to know what's happening if a student uses ChatGPT. So I really created an alias with funny names, and no one knows them except for Kamal and myself. Yeah. So the little effort student was, okay, we took the task and talked a little bit with ChatGPT and said, okay, this is my task. How should I approach it? Okay, that's a structure. Give me the text for 1.1 and so on. So this was really easy to handle from a student perspective. And there was just one essay that didn't pass, and the best grade was already 2.7. So you see, if you just put in a little effort and not really learn anything about it, you already can get a sufficient grading here. But we wanted to know, how should students properly use that? So the idea was, okay, if we really want to be a good student and learn something by working with the AI, how should that look like? And how do we get good grades here? So we tried a lot of different exam types and tried different prompting strategies and so on, and got all good grades. I think the best grade was 1.3, and I think the baddest grade was 2.7 there. However, it took a lot more time here to do that because we really engaged with the system, talked about it, and in these cases, I was always the good student. Kamal was the copy paste and little effort one. I really learned something about new topics. I didn't, for example, I took the Netzwerktopologie in a master's class, and I had no idea about it. But I really learned something and could work with it and find a good start to do it, even if I don't have any knowledge before. So if you're really working with ChatGPT, it's really helpful and gets students can student help for real learning and engaging with the content and not just copy paste it. So there was, and for this, there was the new idea to get all the prompting strategies and the things we learned from our experiment to put this in a document and help students use AI properly for their studies, because we think there are most of the times two sides. The one side is, oh no, AI is bad, and in the future there will students using AI and teachers using AI, and there will be no more real conversation between teachers and students. And the opposite side is all AI in personalized learning. AI is good, and we think we should meet in the middle and teach students how to properly use AI and help them use it right to really learn something and enhance their learning. So with this idea in mind, we created the Essay Navigator, which had the idea for supporting the learning and essay writing. But there is a big but in here. Still, the student has to create their own essays, have their own ideas, and really have academic work, still do academic work, but with the help of generative AI like ChatGPT. So the Essay Navigator has 7 steps, and it's leaned on the process of writing an essay. So first we start with the idea generation and initial exploration with a lot of prompting strategies for this area. Afterwards, we go to the assumption testing. After that, the focused literature search, then how to draft an essay, critical review it, and iterate it, which is, from our point of view, very crucial that you really use the iteration with the system and not just take the first shot from generative AIs. Then we have some little refinements and citations, and for the 7th step is preparation for the submission, so formatting and something like this. And to teach the students how to really do good prompting, not just use our examples. There is an 8th point here, how to prompt with the BITE approach that was created by Kamal. It's about what components should be used in a prompt to have an effective prompt with the first draft here. So let's start with the examples of the different steps that you can see what we meant with the steps here. So for example, if we start with the idea generation, all of you know that the initial exploration is really crucial for writing an essay. We think of it like a prep time, so preparation for it, and not just start with copy paste anything. The strategy is in this step goes from start to clarify the concept to simplifying complex content. For example, if you got a paper that you want to use or you don't understand, that you can use, for example, an ELI 5 prompt, so explain it like a 5 prompt to understand the content here and engage with the content to use it properly. So one example is the concept clarifier. So the purpose of this concept clarifier is to understand the assignment properly and break it down to the fundamental concepts. Because in our experience, it's really difficult for students to really get all of the assignment right. So they have a lot of ideas or no ideas, but to really have the fundamental concepts that they should use in this assignment is kind of hard for students. So there in the essay navigator, we have the purpose and then the example prompt. And you can see here the example prompt for this strategy is: I need to write an essay based on this assignment description. Can you identify the key concepts and questions that I should address in my essay? And you should enter the assignment description. That's just a starting point, and it's always explained that it's just a starting point to help the students engage with the system. So we kind of push them in the right direction, say, okay, you start here, engage with the system, talk about it, brainstorm your ideas, see it like your study buddy, your sparring partner to work on your essay and not just copy paste something. So think of it like you're talking to a fellow student and get your understanding there and broaden your knowledge in this case. This was the first step. Then to the second step, that's to challenge your first assumption and develop your initial structure. One example here is, for example, the devil's advocate. So as you see, the primary goal of this is critically challenge your assumption. So if you start with an assumption and kind of something is missing there, or you're going in the complete wrong direction, that would be not so good for your essay. So you can use that prompt for having critically challenging your assumptions in the first place. However, you always have to keep in mind that these systems are trained to please, so it would not be such a, oh no, that's all shit that you get out of there. But if you're missing a fundamental part, the AI would point that out and help you here. So that's just another example. In the essay navigator, there are more strategies. I want just to give you a short impression what we put in the essay navigator for the students, how they could work with the essay navigator and with the generative AI for writing their essays. So focused literature research, that's always a real pain for students. And we want to get students that they don't use ChatGPT as a tool for searching literature, because it's not a good tool for it. But it's still valuable to help find out for what literature they should look. So if you have no idea, you're writing your first essay and you're sitting there and thinking of, okay, I want to write something about, I don't know, human resources. Students are struggling with for what literature should I look for? What are keywords I should look for? How do I get good literature, and how do I recognize good literature? So that's a point where ChatGPT or other generative AI can help the students. For example, with the strategy of the cornerstone identifier, where the aim is to identify the pinpoint key elements for the essay and backing them up with external research, so that they get the keywords on which they should look for external papers, for example, for their essay. Then we have the critical review and iteration. So all of us know that if you write your essay and have your structure, you're all in that topic and you're really focused on doing it and doing it like this. But sometimes you're missing something because you're really focused and run in this direction and not and can't see that you're missing a point. So most of the times you have, for example, a talk with your tutor about the structure of your essay, or with fellow students, something like that. But also ChatGPT can help you with that and critically review your created essay or your created structure of the essay. So we want to have students use it like a sparring partner for the draft, and that they receive feedback and even do a better draft with the feedback of ChatGPT. Then refinement and citation. That's a really big pain for students, because they do, most of them, not all, but most of them just do their writing, and afterwards they say, oh, I have to cite this in my essay. What will I have to use APA? Oh, how should I do APA? Oh no, I have to look it up, something like that. And it's really painful to spend so much time on these references to format it correctly. So you can use a generative AI to help you with that afterwards it's really correctly there. Then if you do some preparation for submissions, we don't have a real prompt example here. It's just like we tell students that they are AIs available for check the formatting and also spell checking, because after you read it the third, fourth time, you won't be able to see any mistakes in there. So you can use AI for this, that you don't get any bad grades about wrong spelling here. So that was my information about our essay navigators. I'm happy to have a little discussion with you about it.
Thank you. So direct questions to Kerstin and Kamal. I have one at least. I think I remember here what you're talking about is prompts that you just sent to ChatGPT, but not all of them are only to ChatGPT. You also use some other things, because ChatGPT is not so much coupled to your document, right?
Yes, we used ChatGPT and Perplexity, for example, or even Elicit. However, we tell students that they should train their prompting and try different AI models to find out what suits them best, their writing style, and something like that.
Okay. Okay. So now the discussion time is open, unless there is other direct questions. I think there was one question left between Wolfgang and Carlsen, if I remember well. But I don't know.
Several.
Yeah, many. I think maybe we can, I don't know, can I pick one question, random question here? Can I put the finger at someone and then suddenly comes a question?
Maybe a remark, which might be also interesting for the Mahara guys, because I haven't seen something on that actually here in our presentations, also not in yours. It's a question on how and where to provide feedback for students with an AI. I mean, our idea is that of a dashboard, which is separate tool, document, you may say. And we didn't show it here actually, but what we try to do is really to have this functionality of having links then into the real dashboard, which is a bit difficult. In fact, in the case of our research prototype for the moment, because we're not using the university system, the official system there, so this makes things a little bit difficult. But I could think of certain ways that the feedback could be directly displayed in the portfolio. This would be a great thing. I think it's the same for you, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, right now, our initial plan was to give the feedback right into the systems, but it has shown that this is quite some work to do, and we planned to do it because I think it's the right place, but it should be also marked as AI generated and so on. But it's really, yeah, that's the way to go to. And I mean, the best thing would be some kind of integrated dashboard where you can see all my different assignments and all the different tools. And this is the dream all our students have, because they always say, oh, you have a blog system, you have an e-portfolio system, a learning management system, and I need to keep track of all these things. So this would be nice to have this dashboard where see, okay, I've got some feedback, and I can go there and see everything in one place. I don't know how you think about different systems and the university. Do you like it or do you hate it?
I also think it's the best place to put the feedback into the portfolio, maybe like a comment or something. But the professor or the tutor or someone needs to review the feedback before it goes into the document for the student, and then it's not reducing the time.
Then it's too late.
It's not less work for the tutors.
I would have a complementary question, because this is basically so the place where you would put this into this dialogue with a chat system involves that you steadily copy paste and steadily exchange. So as far as I know, I don't know ChatGPT that well, but as far as I know, all these systems, you basically have to copy and paste the whole text all the time, right? Is that correct, Kirsten? So that would mean that providing a reference and then having a dialogue about that reference would be a lot more productive, for example.
I mean, maybe
Sharing link, for example.
My dream version would be your portfolio system, and then you have this little bubbles with comments at certain blocks and at certain parts of your the portfolio that says, oh, look at this image, you try to show this, but you should do this and that because it's not really clear, or you forgot some figures, or how about this literature. So that you go through your whole portfolio, and then at the right place you see the right feedback.
The Ulmer guys do this when it's about LaTeX, with LaTeX, and they inject notes within the LaTeX code, which is generating the little yellow stickers.
This is what humans do if they are really fly sick in a portfolio. But I have a question to Kerstin. Kerstin, yes, Kerstin. I mean, I totally get what you're doing, and then I think it shows that ChatGPT can be used by some student who really wants to learn with that. But the question is, it seems to me that you did it then mostly exclusively with ChatGPT, where you searched a little bit in the literature. Did you really read the literature, or did you just search and then ask ChatGPT again? I found this paper and that, and because the thing is, when you talked about the citations, you lost me a bit, because I really try to get my students to use a reference management manager like Zotero, and really collect all the papers in Zotero, and to use in the commenting memo function of Zotero, and start to do like a Zettelkasten or something like this in this, because I think this is really good practice for learning. And this looked for me a little bit like you make them very codependent on them to do all the work, and don't really know how to do it in reality. But maybe I'm just too old for that, and I'm just too critical.
No. There were two parts. So the little effort one was really like, okay, I have this paper, give me the information for my essay. But with the essay navigator, we tell them to do it properly. But for example, they get a paper they don't understand, they can use ChatGPT, for example, to get a first summary, ask questions about to understand this paper. Okay. And yes, you're right, they should use something like Zotero or something like that. But that's a really hard training for students. Our impression is that most of the students don't use it, so that they could get some help from something like ChatGPT to do their citation right. But you're right, they should use something properly with Zotero or something like that. However, we think it's even better if they use papers, get them explained, read it afterwards, and use it and cite it afterwards, than just copy paste it. So we're trying to get, because we have a lot of professors that are complaining about, oh no, I got another copy paste essay, and I have to give a bad grade to it. So we want to give them more how to properly use the systems, and not just copy paste it here.
So the example Projekt Netzwerktopologie that you mentioned is an example I was tutoring a few years ago, and I must say this is a perfect example of a portfolio success. At the IU, the portfolios has a very strict mentality. It has 3 phases: a preliminary concept phase, a kind of first work into it, and then a final phase, and then you get the feedback. And typically, the students that are in masters that enter there, these are very often short masters, they got no clue. They don't even know what is a network mask. What is this? And then they basically try to give their first concept. They typically have an application in mind that tries to apply that, but then they realize that they have no technical clue to do that. And this is easily, reported in the concept phase as a feedback. And then poof, they go into learning, and then they start to realize it's master time. It's time for me to master my own learning and enterprise something for the learning. And I think ChatGPT can help into this, but at least you have this formative feedback that tells them, yeah, now it's time for you to organize the knowledge. It's the latest time. And that works very well.
But it was very content specific. I mean, because what you are showing is like it's a very standardized topic which has been written over and over and over and over again. And it's not like you have this creative task to say, come up with some new way of doing this.
Oh, no, there are. No. You find people who try to involve the situation they have in work with this very special line for the airport team with emergency guarantees, 500 kilobits, but this is still very valuable and so on. No, you can really use very, very creative things. This is surprisingly.
Okay.
Before I think Christina has put a question into the chat, we should look at it. But before we do that, I would like to ask all of you to send me by mail your presentation, if possible, with a CC BY allowance, if possible, so I can share them on the screen. Christina, it would be better if you give me the origins of the pictures for this, the Uplus URLs. That's it. Yeah, so maybe we go to the question of Christina. Do you see it, Kerstin, in the chat?
I can also speak
Oh, you
for
can
the
say it.
recording.
Yeah.
I mean, still awake here, haven't fallen asleep yet. It's been very interesting listening to everybody and hearing more about the projects that you're doing. So just very short time ago, Carsten talked about adding feedback directly on artifacts, on pages, and then kind of giving really good feedback. Of course, it needs to be reviewed first. But so there's my question: how can the AI actually decide on which artifacts to add the feedback and where not to? Because I assume it shouldn't be adding feedback to every single thing, especially when you want to look at the portfolio in context, because it doesn't have any knowledge. And then if you already have an answer for that, how do you train the system to make so that it can make more of these decisions when to provide feedback, when not to provide feedback, when to be critical, when maybe to be more supportive, and all of those things? How do you make those decisions, and when does it come in?
But right now, we are not doing that, but we are giving feedback to a certain piece of a portfolio, because this is a major technical thing. So this is more in the future planning. One way to do it would be to really have to assess the whole thing and then also give it the smaller chunks, and then to tell it, now look at this chunk within this portfolio and what could you give as a feedback to improve it based on the other assessment you've already done. So this would be the thing. So that you, in this, I think it would be very, well, you could do it within the portfolio system in a way, because when you have all the blocks and when you tell them on this page where are the blocks with content 1, content B, content C, and so on, and now give the feedback. Do you need to give feedback to one of them? Can they be improved or something like this? So, but it would be extremely resource intensive. So the University of Bremen is now very much about Nachhaltigkeit and all that. So this could be really, if you really think about it, if you do all these LLM evaluations, this would use a lot of computing power, actually. So maybe it's, I don't know if it's really feasible from the monetary right now. I mean, probably you could say, okay, in a few years it's much less expensive, but I mean, our portfolios were like, most of them were like 8 pages, and each page has like 10 or 15 blocks and on them, and when this means you have like 100 elements you have to analyze, and maybe within the text block there are also pictures and all that. So this gives quite a lot of stuff to analyze. It's not like just as an essay. You just run it through like spaCy, for example, and get some fast result.
I have a little bit different position to that, I have to admit. I mean, there is this aspect of granularity in a e-portfolio, and we're struggling with that. The reason for that is that different from HTML or XML, we don't have a predefined hierarchy structure, and we allow our students to design, to format, to structure their portfolios individually. So you did this with an image recognition part, trying to identify structural elements. Like this is an image, this is a piece of text or something like that. We're also trying that, but rather on the HTML level, trying to identify what could be a paragraph.
Yeah.
Because we don't know that exactly. Where does it end? And what is the other element? Why is this important in our case? For instance, we also have the problem that we have currently run dedicated models for different subject fields covered in our lecture. The reason for that is that we do have, give you an example, the task for our students is to write a portfolio for a module consisting of 3 lectures. And one is then programming. The other one is computer science fundamentals. And the other one is, what do we have there? I don't know. But they could be very different. And that's why we have differently trained models for that one.
Oh, yes.
So this is where we have, first of all, have to guess what is this paragraph about? Yeah, really to come up with an idea what model to apply in this case. So what I'm trying to explain here is we are already cutting the portfolio into pieces, which of course provides us with some means also giving dedicated feedback then for individual sections. And I would also say that, I mean, if there's something like specific information analysis on references or references there, we don't need an AI for that. We can identify exactly where is a reference as a text as a simple search. Yeah, and this could be a comment that we automatically generate. So in parts, I would say it's cheap to provide localized feedback in a way, not for all. But the question is also a little bit: do we really have to go to get into so much detail at the very end in terms of the formative feedback?
I mean, that's the reason why we also want to use different tools and because I would totally agree with you. And also, I think this is an important thing about this block approach in Mahara, because you can really place some stuff just on one line and in the near of it, as you said, and then you could see, okay, on which height are these blocks and what distance is there, because in a portfolio on the page, distance means semantical distance or the proximity, and so this is very important to repeat it.
You did show some counter examples where you had columns which were not laid out in tables, and things were like this and like
yes, but still they are in a way. There's a distance, you can measure a distance,
and you see this on a mobile phone, and this is broken.
Yes, and so I'm sorry, but the portfolio is a thing done graphically on the larger screen. So you have to have like a large tablet or a desktop machine or a computer. And on the phone, you're collecting your artifacts. And later on, you are arranging your stuff on this. I mean, I know I wait until the day when there's a student who said, and I did my master thesis on my smartphone. How do you think it will be? But I don't know. Have you already written your bachelor thesis on the smartphone or?
Not on the smartphone, no.
No.
I wrote slides on an iPad.
Yeah.
At least, yeah.
But with a keyboard.
Yeah, with the keyboard.
Yeah, external keyboard.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't.
This doesn't count.
This is where it starts to become small, narrower screen, and I always have my windows to be half screen. So when I hear the people like you, I tell you, they just don't think of me with my half window screen. Yeah, that's fine. I thought your question, Christina, was actually addressed to Kerstin, because if you turn this into something like ChatGPT, the answer is no. She can't. She doesn't. There is no adjustments that you can do to ChatGPT except maybe formulate a better prompt. But that's pretty difficult, I find.
Yeah, with ChatGPT, you have to think about it like a fellow student. It can give you good information or also real nonsense. So you always have to critically think of what you get from ChatGPT.
I have a question for you, Pierre, because this is relevant to the things we were questioning before. This presentation of the language analysis, you could do lots of different presentation, but with the easy just numbers, there are some advantages, is that you can just sort them and then offer the user, when he sees one portfolio, to see the next portfolio or the next in complexity level or the next the neighboring ones in a group fashion. So there's a lot of different visualization you could think of, and which would be maybe less intrusive than a big graphic. So the big graphic is really just one of them, but I really think that we should be much broader.
Yes, our idea is to have an overview and dashboard, and then you can go into the detail and into more detail, next level, and the next level would be the portfolio, the text passages.
Yeah, but then even if you go from, so the drill down aspect, you completely lose orientation, or you don't, then you still can go along your line in an easy way, and then you still see the number like this. And these are things that I think we have not explored. I don't know whether this is practical, and it's very likely that well, you have like, how many, like 5 or 10 dimensions? There's probably too many of them anyway. So at least you don't navigate through them all the times. Other ideas?
One further question to Kerstin. In your essay navigator, yeah, first of all, is it available for anyone?
This is IU level, I think.
Yeah, it's for IU students, yes.
And what is your advice in the essay navigator about data privacy? Because the students need to upload their whole essay they wrote on their own to get feedback on a certain level.
And all the papers they read.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really difficult topic here. So we tell the students that it is difficult. We don't know where the data go, so they have to be sensitive about it. However, if they want to get feedback, they have to upload it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, you still recommend using it?
Yeah. No, not. We are recommending, if you use it properly. That's our recommendation.
Okay.
So our message is, we don't copy paste anything into ChatGPT. You can do better, really learn something if you do it like that.
Can I ask a stupid question? So there used to be some Unicode characters which have been called in some editors gremlins. Typically, like character numbers below 32 are examples of these things, but there are a few other categories of Unicode characters that are still left blank by Unicode, but because they might be populated one day, and you could use the Greek or Russian I instead of using the Roman I. I did have one report to assess. All the I's and the O's were Russian, so I couldn't search into it anymore. And I don't think this is safe. This was not a student. This was research work, a project. But this was really bizarre. And I could only say probably they use some generation system to do that. But I think with ChatGPT or with any other generative AI, we're not protected from this. So at the end, the only way to get protected is to retype everything, right?
Yeah.
Do you intend to go for further experiments?
Yeah, kind of. Yes, we're looking at different experiments right now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, it's 43. I think we're all tired. Any other questions?
That's Christina.
Christina, do you want a coffee?
Nope, not at this stage. No. I don't have any questions right now. It was really good to hear the different opinions and also ways of accessing the information, and that your projects focus very much on the text analysis. In the English-speaking world, what I've seen a bit, not necessarily a bit more, but what we've been experimenting with is reflection bots. So that don't give answers, because we all know that that is problematic from generative AI bots, but where they're always asking questions, and have a reflective framework involved, so that students can go deeper in their reflection. And that is quite a different approach to what you're taking. So it's good to see those two different sides to it, because I think they all have the necessary space, and then also in particular the visualization when you get to the point of the analysis and aggregating information and trying to see concepts and red threads and things like that. That's been really fascinating. Thank you all for having shared what you're doing.
Great. Well, in this case, thank you very much. We're going to be closing, I think. We can stop the recording, and